You want to know the exact moment I realized my career was being stolen from under my nose? Tuesday morning, 7:23 a.m., standing in line at Murphy's Diner in downtown Atlanta, when my phone buzzed with a text that made my coffee taste like ash. Heard about Jessica getting the promotion. Guess being Brian's favorite pays off. Sorry, man. Tony, I stared at those words while the waitress asked if I wanted cream. Jessica Parker, 26 years old. Been at Phoenix Industrial Solutions for 11 months. Just got promoted to operations manager. My job. The position I'd been working toward for 5 solid years. Let me back up so you understand how deep this betrayal goes. I'm Carter Reynolds, 45, been grinding in manufacturing and supply chain since college. Started at Phoenix right after my divorce, when I needed steady work and honest pay to rebuild my life. Brian Walsh, department head, seemed like a straight shooter during the interview. Firm handshake, looked me in the eye, promised opportunities for dedicated people. For 5 years, I believed every word. Worked 60-hour weeks, solved problems nobody else could touch, saved the company millions when our Texas supplier went bankrupt, and I found replacement parts at midnight from a contact in Ohio. Brian always had the same response. Carter, you're the backbone here. Your time will come. Your time will come. Heard that phrase so many times it became torture. Jessica arrived last winter, fresh MBA from Georgia Tech, 0 real experience. Nice enough girl? Asked smart questions, seemed eager to learn. I actually enjoyed training her, showing her how our systems worked, explaining the delicate process of moving industrial equipment across 3 states without breaking anything. What I missed was how quickly she started getting invited to meetings I wasn't included in. How Brian's door stayed open when she stopped by, but closed for everyone else. How she somehow knew about client problems before I did, despite me being senior operations. The promotion announcement came yesterday afternoon. Brian gathered the department, gave his speech about fresh perspectives and new energy. Jessica stood there glowing while I clapped like an idiot, each slap feeling like a punch to my gut. Now I'm sitting here with cold coffee, realizing 5 years of loyalty just got flushed. But here's what Brian and Jessica don't know. I've been watching these past few weeks, started noticing things that don't add up, little details that make you wonder what's really going on behind closed doors. Time to find out exactly what kind of game they've been playing. The first red flag should have been obvious 3 weeks back. I walked into the break room and found Tony Martinez hunched over his phone, scrolling through what looked like photos. When he saw me coming, he quickly flipped the screen down. Tony's been at Phoenix longer than anyone except Brian himself. 42 years old, steady as concrete, never one for office drama. But that morning something was eating at him. Everything all right? I asked, pouring coffee from the perpetually burnt pot. Tony glanced around like he was checking for surveillance. Carter, you ever notice anything strange about Brian and Jessica? I set my mug down hard. Strange how? He shook his head fast. Nothing. Forget I mentioned it. But I didn't forget. Started paying real attention after that conversation. Last week I needed Brian's signature on emergency repair orders. His office was dark, but voices came from the conference room. Through the glass wall I saw Brian and Jessica bent over paperwork, sitting closer than any supervisor should with a new employee. Her hand touched his arm as she pointed to something on the page. Could have been innocent. Probably was. But combined with Tony's comment, it stuck. Then came the Chicago conference trip. Brian announced Jessica would accompany him to the Midwest Manufacturing Summit, the same conference I'd attended every year since joining Phoenix. This time, Brian said they needed fresh eyes on industry trends. Fresh eyes, right. When they returned, Jessica had insights about contract negotiations I'd never taught her. She referenced conversations with suppliers I didn't even know she'd met. When I asked Brian about the key sessions, he gave vague answers and changed the subject. The breaking point came Friday night. I stayed late finishing a proposal for Henderson Industrial, our biggest client. Around 8, I went to print the final version and realized I'd left my security badge in Brian's office. The executive floor was dark except one office. Brian's door cracked open, voices drifting out, the kind of laughter that doesn't belong in professional settings. Should have walked away. Instead, I moved closer. Jessica's voice, "Are you sure Carter doesn't suspect anything?" Brian's response froze my blood. "Carter's reliable, but he lacks vision. He'll accept whatever we tell him. Besides, after your promotion goes through, you'll outrank him anyway." "I feel guilty," Jessica said. "He's taught me so much." "Don't," Brian cut her off. "Business is business. Sometimes good people get passed over." I stood in that hallway for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Then I quietly grabbed my badge and left. That night, sitting in my apartment, the pieces clicked together. The private meetings, The business trips, the inside knowledge. My promotion going to someone with 11 months experience. But knowing something and proving it are different animals. Going after Brian Walsh without solid evidence would be career suicide. I needed help. Next morning, I cornered Tony in the parking lot. Remember what you asked about Brian and Jessica? We need to talk. Tony's face went pale. Carter, I've got twin boys starting college. Wife's been unemployed 6 months. I can't make enemies. What if I told you I overheard something that proves you're right? Tony stood quiet, keys jingling in his hand. Even if that's true, what can we do? Brian's connected all the way to corporate. He could destroy both our careers with one phone call. So we just let this happen? Tony looked genuinely pained. Sometimes keeping your head down is survival. But I was done keeping my head down. Time to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. 3 days after Jessica's promotion announcement, I made the biggest mistake of my professional life. Started with a photo Tony finally showed me. He pulled me aside after the monthly safety meeting, looking like a man carrying a guilty secret. I have to show you something, he whispered, glancing around the empty hallway. Took this at the Chicago conference. The photo on his phone was grainy, but clear enough. Brian and Jessica in the Palmer House hotel bar, leaning close over drinks, her hand resting on his forearm. Body language that screamed intimacy, not business. Jesus, Tony, how long have you known? Since Chicago. Couldn't sleep, went down for coffee around midnight, saw them coming back from dinner together. His voice cracked slightly. I wanted to tell you after the promotion, but my family situation, send me that photo. Carter number, if Brian finds out I took this, he won't. I just need proof of what we're dealing with. Tony hesitated, then forwarded the image. One grainy photo that confirmed months of suspicion. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at evidence of my stolen career. 5 years of loyalty, reduced to watching someone sleep their way into my position. The anger built slowly, like water heating toward boiling. I started typing an email. No plan, no strategy, just pure rage flowing through my fingers. Subject: why Jessica Parker really got promoted. Everyone deserves to know what's happening in operations. Brian Walsh and Jessica Parker have been having an affair, and that's the only reason she got the promotion over qualified employees. I have photographic evidence of their relationship during the Chicago business trip. This is corruption, plain and simple. Jessica has no experience and no business running operations, but she has Brian's personal attention. The company deserves better than this favoritism. I attached Tony's photo and sat back, finger hovering over send. In my fury, I thought I was sending it to my personal Gmail to think it over. Muscle memory kicked in. I clicked the first contact that started with Carter, but it wasn't my personal account. It was the operations department distribution list. The moment message sent flashed on screen, my stomach dropped. I frantically checked recipients. 15 people, including Brian Walsh and Jessica Parker. No, I shouted at my laptop. My phone started buzzing immediately. Text after text from colleagues. Holy shit, Carter, did you mean to send this to everyone? Dude, you just declared war. Hope you have backup. This is insane. You okay? Hands shaking, I called Tony. He answered first ring. Carter, you sound panicked. I fucked up, Tony. Bad. Sent that photo to the entire department by accident. Dead silence. Then, you what? I was angry. Wasn't thinking straight. Meant to send it to myself, but hit wrong contact and... Christ almighty, Carter. You just destroyed both our careers! My name's on that photo file. Tony, I can explain to Brian that you didn't... Explain what? That you stole evidence from me and broadcast it without permission? Line went dead. I sat alone with my phone buzzing nonstop, too terrified to read the messages. In one moment of rage, I'd blown up everything. Not just my career, but Tony's family security too. Brian would retaliate hard. I knew him well enough to count on that. He wouldn't just fire me. He'd systematically destroy my reputation across the industry. But the cat was out of the bag now. No taking it back. Time to see just how dirty Brian Walsh was willing to fight. Brian's counterattack came faster than expected. Next morning, my badge wouldn't work. Security walked me straight to Brian's office, where he sat like a judge ready to deliver execution. Sit down, Carter. Voice cold as January. Jessica nowhere in sight, probably hiding from the mess. Last night's email was unfortunate, obviously sent during poor judgment. I stayed quiet. Nothing would make this better now. Here's what happens. You resign immediately. In exchange, I won't press harassment and defamation charges. Press charges for telling the truth? Brian leaned forward. Truth? You mean your fantasy about inappropriate relationships? That's serious defamation, Carter. Could result in lawsuits. I have photographic evidence. You have pictures of colleagues eating dinner. Nothing inappropriate about business meals during conferences. Smooth bastard. But he wasn't finished. Of course, if you prefer dragging this out, I can make calls. Manufacturing's a small world in Atlanta. Word travels about employees who make false accusations, can't handle workplace stress, lash out when passed over. Clear threat. Resign quietly or get blackballed industry-wide. I need time to think. End of business today. I left Phoenix knowing I was screwed either way. Resign and Brian controls the story. Fight and he destroys my reputation using his connections. But Brian made one mistake. He assumed I'd go quietly. Instead, I drove to Helen Rodriguez's office. Helen managed procurement for Henderson Industrial, our biggest client. I'd worked with her 3 years, saved her company millions through efficient logistics. If anyone would listen, it was Helen. "Carter," she said, surprised to see me. "Isn't Brian usually handling our account now?" "Helen, I need to ask something and I need honesty." "How's your experience been with Jessica Parker lately?" Her expression shifted. "Why do you ask?" "Because there are things you should know about what's happening at Phoenix." Helen closed her door and sat back down. "Go ahead." I told her everything. The promotion, the affair, my suspicions about Jessica's qualifications. Helen listened without interrupting. "You know," she said finally, "we've had concerns after the last shipment. Jessica seemed confused about specifications you'd handle perfectly. Her communication style is different." "Different how?" "Less professional. Like she's unsure but trying to fake competence." Helen showed me her phone. An email thread where Jessica's responses to technical questions were vague, almost nonsensical. Generic corporate speak that didn't address actual issues. I was planning to call Brian next week. This contract's too important to risk on someone who doesn't understand our requirements. What if there was an alternative? Helen raised an eyebrow. "What kind of alternative?" "I'm leaving Phoenix. But other companies would value the relationship we've built." "Are you suggesting what I think?" "I'm suggesting good people shouldn't suffer because of bad management." Helen opened her laptop. "Stellar Dynamics has been pursuing our business for years. Their operations head, Patricia Coleman, called last week." She slid Patricia's contact information across the desk. "Patricia's smart, experienced, ethical. If someone with your background and client relationships joined Stellar, it might be worth discussing vendor changes." I looked at the business card. "Patricia Coleman, Vice President of Operations, Stellar Dynamics." "Helen, if Brian discovers you're considering this, Brian should have thought about that before putting an unqualified person on our account." "Business is business, Carter. Results matter more than office politics." I left Henderson Industrial with Patricia's number and something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. But first, I had a resignation letter to write, and Brian would remember it. I spent that afternoon crafting my resignation letter. Not the groveling apology Brian expected, but something with teeth. "Dear Brian, after careful consideration, I hereby submit my resignation from Phoenix Industrial Solutions, effective in 2 weeks per company policy. Recent management decisions have made clear that my skills and experience are no longer valued here. Both the company and I will benefit from this transition. I will ensure all current projects are properly documented and transferred to appropriate personnel, assuming they have necessary qualifications. Best regards, Carter Reynolds, professional but pointed." Let him read between the lines. I delivered it personally at 4:30 p.m. Brian read it twice, jaw tightening. 2 weeks? Given yesterday's incident, immediate departure would be better for everyone. Company policy requires 2 weeks' notice. "Unless you're firing me for cause." Brian knew firing me outright would raise questions, especially after my email had circulated. "Better to let me resign and control the narrative." "Fine, 2 weeks. But you'll work directly under Jessica during transition. Ultimate humiliation. Training my replacement, the woman who'd slept her way into my position. Whatever you think is best." But I wasn't planning to spend 2 weeks as Brian's punching bag. That evening, I called Patricia Coleman. "Miss Coleman, this is Carter Reynolds from Phoenix Industrial. Helen Rodriguez suggested I contact you." "Carter, yes, Helen mentioned you might call. I've heard excellent things about your work." Patricia's voice was warm but professional, already a contrast to Brian's condescending tone. "I'm in a transition period with my current employer. Wondered if we might discuss opportunities at Stellar Dynamics." "Absolutely. Can you meet tomorrow morning? I'd love to discuss how your experience fits our operations team." 24 hours later, I sat in Stellar's downtown Atlanta offices. Clean, modern, with energy Phoenix had been lacking for years. Patricia was sharp, asked detailed questions about my background, actually listened to answers. "Your client retention record is impressive. Helen speaks highly of your problem-solving abilities. I believe in building relationships, not just processing orders." "That's exactly what we need." Our operations division has grown rapidly, but we've struggled maintaining personal touch with major accounts. We talked 90 minutes. At the end, Patricia made an offer that took my breath away. I'd like you as director of client operations. Base salary 30% higher than Phoenix was paying, plus performance bonuses and full benefits. Most importantly, you'd have autonomy to run operations your way. 30% raise. Real authority. Respect from day one. When could I start? How about 2 weeks? That should give you time to finish at Phoenix. I shook Patricia's hand, feeling lighter than I had in months. But Patricia had one more surprise. Carter, I should mention, Henderson Industrial has been in preliminary discussions about switching vendors. Helen said those talks might accelerate if we had right operations leadership in place. Helen had already planted seeds. Phoenix was about to lose their biggest client, and Brian had no idea what was coming. Next morning at Phoenix, Jessica awkwardly tried asserting her new authority. Asked me to walk her through the Henderson account, taking notes on processes she should have learned months ago. This seems complicated. Are all our accounts this complex? Only the profitable ones. She missed the sarcasm. Maybe we can simplify these procedures? Make them more efficient? Sure, Jessica. You should definitely change systems that have been working perfectly for years. By Friday, word was spreading about my resignation. Some colleagues were supportive but quiet, afraid to associate with the troublemaker. Others avoided me entirely. But Greg Thompson from procurement pulled me aside after lunch. Carter, people are talking. About your email, about Jessica's promotion, about everything. What kind of talk? The kind that says you were right. Nobody wants to say it publicly, but we all see what's happening. The real war was just beginning. My last day at Phoenix should have been quiet. Clean out desk, shake hands, walk away with dignity. Instead, it became the day Brian Walsh showed his true colors and made the fatal mistake that destroyed him. I arrived at 8 to find my computer access revoked overnight. Not unusual for departing employees, but when I went to HR for temporary access to complete project handoffs, they said Brian had already handled the transition. Handled how? By dumping 5 years of client relationships and operational knowledge on Jessica's desk with zero documentation. Around noon, Helen Rodriguez called. Her voice was tight with frustration. Carter, what the hell is going on? Jessica just called saying she can't access Henderson account files. She doesn't know our delivery schedules, contact protocols, nothing. They cut my access this morning. Can't help with handoffs anymore. This is insane. We have 3 shipments in transit and critical deadlines next week. Jessica sounded like she was about to cry. Helen paused, then her voice hardened. You know what? This seals it. I'm calling Patricia Coleman this afternoon. Phoenix just proved they can't handle professional transitions. That evening, Greg Thompson texted me. Emergency meeting after work. Something big happened. We met at Murphy's Pub. Far enough from Phoenix, we wouldn't see colleagues. Greg looked agitated, constantly checking over his shoulder. Brian called an all-hands meeting this afternoon. Told everyone you were fired for spreading malicious rumors and compromising client relationships. Fired? I resigned. Not according to Brian's version. He said your email was part of unstable behavior pattern and Phoenix had to protect itself from false accusations. My blood pressure spiked. What else? He's telling people you stole client data when you left. That you violated non-compete agreements by talking to competitors, basically painting you as corporate spy. That's complete bullshit. We know, but Brian's got people scared. He implied anyone supporting your conspiracy theories might face similar consequences. Greg showed me a company-wide email sent after the meeting. Following Carter Reynolds' termination for policy violations, Phoenix reminds all employees of confidentiality obligations. Any unauthorized communication with former employees regarding internal company matters may result in disciplinary action. Brian was trying to isolate me completely, cut off information sources, poison my reputation, ensure no one would risk helping me. Greg, I need you to document everything. Brian's statements in the meeting, his email, witness accounts. If he's going to lie about what happened, we need proof of truth. Greg nodded grimly. Already on it. So are others. Brian pushed too hard today. People are starting to see through his act. Next morning brought more bad news. Patricia Coleman called while I was having coffee. Carter, I received concerning information yesterday. Call from Brian Walsh claiming you violated confidentiality agreements and might present legal risks for any company hiring you. My stomach dropped. Patricia, none of that's true. I believe you, but it creates complications. Our legal department wants to delay your start date pending verification of Brian's claims. How long? 2 weeks? Maybe more? I'm sorry, Carter. Politics shouldn't interfere with business, but I have to protect Stellar from potential lawsuits. Brian had played his trump card perfectly. Even with a job lined up, he was sabotaging my transition. But he'd also made one critical error. By attacking so aggressively, he'd revealed just how desperate he really was. That afternoon, sitting in my empty apartment with no job and diminishing prospects, my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Carter Reynolds? Young voice, nervous. Yeah, who's this? This is Jessica Parker. We need to talk. I almost hung up. Don't think that's smart, Jessica. Please, I'm at the Starbucks on North Highland. 5 minutes. Against better judgment, I drove over. Jessica sat in corner booth looking miserable. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back carelessly. The confident new manager was gone, replaced by someone who looked defeated. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. What do you want, Jessica? I want to apologize. And I want to tell you the truth about what really happened. She took a shaky breath. Brian told me the promotion was based on merit. Said I'd shown exceptional potential and that you were too set in your ways to handle new directions he wanted for operations. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. The promotion, salary increase, respect. I'd never had anything like that before. Jessica stared at her untouched coffee. But after you left, everything fell apart. I can't handle the Henderson account. Don't understand half the procedures you developed. Brian keeps telling me to figure it out but won't provide support. So now you want my help? Now I want to tell the truth. Brian pressured me into a relationship. Said it would be good for both our careers. I was stupid enough to think he actually cared about me. Jessica looked up, tears in her eyes. When your email came out, he threw me under the bus immediately. Told everyone I'd seduced him, that he was victim of my manipulation. This was getting interesting. What are you proposing, Jessica? I'm resigning, but first I want to set the record straight. You deserve that promotion, not me. And people should know what kind of person Brian really is. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text thread. Messages from Brian that were clearly inappropriate, discussing their relationship, making crude comments about other employees, including disparaging remarks about my age and obsolete skills. Would you be willing to share these messages with the right people? Jessica nodded. I'm done protecting him. He destroyed my reputation to save his own. Time to return the favor. I studied her face. The smugness was gone, replaced by genuine regret and determination. Jessica, if you do this, there's no going back. Brian will try to destroy you completely. He already has. I've got nothing left to lose. What about your career? This will follow you. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. I made a decision. Okay, but we do this right. Document everything, get witnesses, make sure we have ironclad proof. What do you need me to do? First, forward me every inappropriate message Brian sent. Second, I need you to write a detailed statement about how the relationship started and how he used his position to pressure you. Jessica nodded eagerly. What else? Then we take it to people who matter. Not just Phoenix HR, but corporate headquarters. Maybe even the state labor board. When? Tomorrow morning. Strike fast before Brian realizes what's coming. For the first time since this mess started, I felt like I had real ammunition instead of just suspicions. Brian thought he'd won by isolating me and poisoning my reputation. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He'd created an enemy out of someone who knew all his secrets. That evening I called Tony Martinez. Time to see if he'd grown a backbone since I'd accidentally destroyed his comfortable silence. Carter? Jesus, I heard about what Brian's been saying. Corporate spy? That's insane. Tony, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you willing to tell the truth about what you saw in Chicago? Long pause. Why now? Because Jessica Parker just handed me enough evidence to bury Brian Walsh permanently. But I need corroborating witnesses. Jessica's helping you? Brian threw her under the bus. She's ready to expose everything. Another silence. Then Tony's voice, quieter. My wife asked me something last night. She said, Tony, if someone was doing wrong at your work and you stayed silent, what kind of man does that make you? What did you tell her? That I was protecting my family. She said maybe I was really protecting myself. Tony sighed heavily. Carter, I've got those photos from Chicago, and I overheard more than I told you. Brian was bragging to another manager about how easy it was to manipulate young employees. You recorded this? Voice memo on my phone. Was going to delete it, but something stopped me. Tony, if you come forward now, you're a whistleblower, not a coward. And if Brian retaliates? With what? He's about to be destroyed. And even if he tries, wrongful termination lawsuits pay well. Next morning, Jessica and I met at a coffee shop downtown to coordinate our attack. She'd printed 30 pages of text messages dating back 4 months. The evidence was damning. Message from Brian 3 months ago. Don't worry about the promotion process. I've already decided. Just play along with the interviews. Another from last month. Carter's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful until after the announcement. Most damaging was Brian's response when Jessica expressed guilt. Good employees follow orders. Great employees know when to keep their mouths shut. Which one are you? These messages prove premeditation, I told Jessica. This wasn't a workplace romance that got out of hand. This was calculated corruption. Jessica nodded grimly. There's more. He made me sign a fake performance evaluation claiming I'd exceeded all targets. I knew it was false, but he said it was necessary for the promotion. Do you still have a copy? In my desk at home. Get it. We'll need documentation showing fraud in the promotion process. At 9 a.m., we walked into Phoenix's corporate headquarters in downtown Atlanta. Jessica had called ahead requesting an urgent meeting with the VP of Human Resources about misconduct in the operations department. Margaret Stevens, the VP, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s. She listened without interruption as Jessica read a prepared statement detailing Brian's sexual harassment and abuse of power. These are serious allegations, Miss Parker. Do you have supporting evidence? Jessica slid the printed messages across the conference table. Margaret read through them, her expression growing darker with each page. Mr. Reynolds, what's your role in this complaint? I'm the employee who should have received the promotion that was fraudulently given to Ms. Parker. I'm also the victim of Mr. Walsh's retaliation campaign. I presented my documentation, the hostile work environment, Brian's defamatory statements to potential employers, his violation of company transition policies. We'll need to investigate these claims thoroughly, Margaret said. This could take several weeks. Ma'am, Jessica interjected, there's something else you should know. Mr. Walsh has been telling employees that anyone who supports Mr. Reynolds will face consequences. Several people are afraid to come forward. Margaret's face hardened. Is that a threat? It's witness intimidation. And it's happening right now. Margaret picked up her phone. Security? I need you to escort Brian Walsh from the building immediately. Tell him he's suspended pending investigation. She looked back at us. Ladies and gentlemen, Phoenix Industrial takes these allegations very seriously. Mr. Walsh will not be returning to work during our review. Through the conference room window, I watched security officers walking toward the elevator. Brian Walsh had no idea his world was about to collapse. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours of Brian's suspension, Phoenix was in crisis mode. Corporate investigators arrived from headquarters, interviewing employees about the hostile work environment and discriminatory practices. But victory came with a price I hadn't anticipated. That evening, my wife Sarah confronted me in our kitchen. Divorce papers spread across the table. Congratulations, Carter. You won. Brian's suspended, Jessica's gone, Phoenix is falling apart. Happy now? I looked around our half-empty apartment. We'd sold furniture to pay bills during my unemployment. Dark circles under my eyes from months of stress-induced insomnia showed in the hallway mirror. No, I'm not happy. I'm exhausted. Good, because I'm exhausted too. Fighting this battle consumed you completely. You missed dinner with my parents last month because you were obsessing over evidence. You forgot our anniversary because you were plotting revenge. Sarah's voice cracked. I married a man who believed in justice. But somewhere along the way, you became someone who cared more about winning than about us. Sarah, I was fighting for our future, for my career. Were you? Or were you fighting because your ego couldn't handle being passed over? That question hit harder than any of Brian's attacks. Had I started this for justice or just wounded pride? Maybe both, I admitted quietly. Sarah pushed the papers aside. I'm not signing these tonight. But Carter, if we're going to make this work, you need to decide what really matters. Your marriage or your war? Next morning brought more complications. Patricia Coleman called with mixed news. Carter, Phoenix's legal troubles have resolved the concerns about hiring you. Your start date is back on track. That's great news. However, Henderson Industrial's contract transition has created some problems. 3 other Phoenix clients are also demanding to switch vendors immediately. We're looking at rapid expansion that might strain our resources. Strain how? 70-hour weeks for the next 6 months. Extensive travel to manage account transitions. Are you prepared for that level of commitment? I stared at the divorce papers on my kitchen table. Patricia, can I call you back? That afternoon, I met with Tony Martinez for coffee. He looked relieved but worried. Corporate cleared me of any wrongdoing, but they're restructuring the entire operations department. Half the staff might be laid off. What about you? They offered me a lateral transfer to the Memphis facility. Same pay, but Sarah would have to quit her job and kids would change schools. You taking it? Tony shrugged. Better than unemployment, but my family's paying the price for doing the right thing. Any regrets about exposing Brian? Number. About waiting so long to speak up? Definitely. I called Jessica that evening. She was staying with her parents in Savannah, trying to rebuild her professional reputation. How are you holding up? Better than expected. I'm taking some business courses, doing freelance consulting. Turns out there's life after corporate politics. Any word from Brian? He's threatening to sue me for defamation. His lawyer sent a nasty letter claiming I fabricated the text messages. Can he prove that? Doubt it. The phone records show everything. But legal threats are expensive, even when you're innocent. Jessica paused. Carter, do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Not exposing Brian, that was definitely right. But the way we did it, the collateral damage to other people. She was talking about the Phoenix employees facing layoffs, the families disrupted by the corporate restructuring, the innocent people caught in our war. Every day, I admitted. Was there another way? Something less destructive? Maybe. But Brian forced our hand when he started retaliating. Sometimes there's no clean way to fight dirty people. 2 weeks later, Brian Walsh was officially terminated from Phoenix Industrial Solutions. The corporate investigation found evidence of sexual harassment, abuse of power, fraudulent promotion practices, and retaliation against whistleblowers. Phoenix's stock price dropped 12% on the news. 7 major clients canceled contracts. The company announced layoffs affecting 43 employees. I'd won the war, but victory tasted like ash when I counted the casualties. 6 months later, I stood in Stellar Dynamics' gleaming conference room, watching my team present plans for a major industrial project in Tennessee. Clean numbers, solid projections, honest work. For the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. My division had grown revenue by 40%. Former Phoenix clients sought us out. New ones signed on based on reputation alone. I was invited to speak at the National Manufacturing Conference about ethical leadership in operations management. But success came with scars. Sarah and I were in marriage counseling, slowly rebuilding trust I'd damaged during my obsession with revenge. Some burned bridges would never fully repair. I'd learned the hard way that fighting corruption doesn't make you immune to becoming consumed by it. On a Tuesday morning, I got an unexpected call. Brian Walsh's voice, subdued and unfamiliar. Carter, this is Brian. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. What do you want, Brian? I wanted to apologize, and to tell you that you were right about everything. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. After Phoenix fired me, I spent months angry, blaming everyone else. Then my wife left me. My kids barely speak to me. Industry connections dried up completely. Brian's voice cracked slightly. I'm working at a small logistics company in Macon now. 40% pay cut, no authority, no respect. Every day I wake up knowing I destroyed my career because I couldn't keep my personal life separate from business decisions. Why are you telling me this? Because I realized something. You didn't destroy me, Carter. I destroyed myself. You just refused to be complicit in my corruption. Brian, I never wanted to hurt innocent people. The layoffs at Phoenix, the families affected by the restructuring, that's on me, not you. I created the situation that made exposure necessary. If I'd promoted you fairly, none of this would have happened. After he hung up, I sat quietly in my office, looking out at Atlanta's skyline. The anger I'd carried for months had finally burned out, replaced by something closer to understanding. That afternoon, I called Tony Martinez in Memphis. He'd adjusted well to his new position. Kids were thriving in their new schools. Jessica had started her own consulting firm in Savannah, specializing in ethical workplace practices. We'd all paid prices for standing up to corruption, but we'd also learned something valuable about the difference between justice and revenge. Justice seeks to correct wrongs and prevent future harm. Revenge seeks to inflict pain equivalent to what you've suffered. Sometimes they overlap, but they're not the same thing. Looking back, I realized the real victory wasn't Brian's destruction. It was proving that decent people don't have to accept corrupt systems. Sometimes you have to walk away from places that don't value you and find ones that do. Sarah was right about one thing. I'd started this fight because my ego couldn't handle being passed over. But somewhere along the way, it became about something bigger, about the principle that merit should matter more than manipulation. If you're listening to this story and facing your own Brian Walsh, remember one thing. The sweetest revenge isn't making others suffer. It's building something better and letting them see how small they really are. Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes it's the only way to win.